So in today's video, we will be talking about the Redux Toolkit. So in this, the first question is, what is Redux Toolkit? Redux Toolkit is our official opinionated batteries included toolset for efficient Redux development. It is intended to be the standard way to write Redux logic, and it is strongly recommended to be used. Official opinionated batteries included toolset for Redux. It includes several utility functions that simplify the most common Redux use cases, including store setup, defining reducers, immutable update logic, and even creating entire slices of state at once without writing any action creators or action types by hand. It also includes the most widely used Redux add-ons like Redux Thunk for asynchronous logic and reselect for writing selector function so that we can use them right away. We already have a few videos on Redux Thunk and examples using Redux Thunk, and also a special video dedicated to reselect. You can check that out. Redux Toolkit has four strong points. So the advantages, first advantage is it is simple. It includes utilities to simplify common use cases like store setup, creating reducers, immutable update logic, and much more. Talking about the second advantage, that is opinionated. Redux Toolkit provides good defaults for store setup out of the box and includes the most commonly used Redux add-ons built in. The third biggest advantage is that it is powerful. It takes inspiration from libraries like Imer and Autodux, and it lets us write mutative, immutable update logic and even create entire slices of state automatically. The last advantage is effective. So the biggest advantage is that it lets us focus on the core logic of the app so we can do more work with less code. Now jumping on to the installation. So Redux Toolkit is available as a package on npm for use with a module bundler or in a node application. So for npm, we can install it by the command npm install redux js slash toolkit. And if you're using yarn, so for that the command is yarn add redux js toolkit. So let us go ahead and install it. So I will open the terminal, new terminal, and here we are going to install the toolkit. So I am using npm, so my command will be npm install redux js toolkit. So I already have that installed, but for you it is going to take a little bit of time and then the installation will be complete. So as soon as the installation is complete, we will move towards the usage and we will see some examples later in some videos. Next is the purpose. The Redux core library is deliberately unopinionated. It lets us decide how we want to handle everything, like store setup, what our store contains, and how we want to build our reducers. So initially, this is all depending on how we want it to be. This is good in some cases because it gives us flexibility, but that flexibility isn't always needed. Sometimes we just want the simplest possible way to get started with some good default behavior out of the box. Or maybe we are writing a larger application and finding ourselves writing some similar code, and we would like to cut down on how much of that code we have to write by hand. Redux Toolkit was originally created to help address three common concerns about Redux. So the concerns include configuring a Redux store is too complicated. The second is there are a lot of packages to get Redux to do anything useful. So a lot of packages to add in Redux to get Redux to do something useful. The third concern was Redux requires too much boilerplate code. Redux requires too much boilerplate code. Boilerplate code, or simply boilerplate, are the sections of code that are repeated in multiple places with little to no variation. So, when using languages that are considered verbose, the programmer must write a lot of boilerplate code to accomplish only minor functionalities. So, this is a demerit of programming if you're doing this. So, we can't solve all of these cases, but in the spirit of Create React App and Apollo Boost, we provide an official recommended set of tools that handle the most common use cases and reduce the need to make extra decisions. So these three concerns are handled by the Redux Toolkit. The second most important question is, why use Redux Toolkit? Redux Toolkit makes it easier to write good Redux application and speeds up development. So I will include it here. Speeds up development. By baking in the recommendations, best practices, providing good default behaviors. So it provides good default behaviors. It helps in catching mistakes and allowing us to write simpler code. Redux Toolkit is beneficial to all Redux users regardless of the skill level or experience. It can be added at the start of a new project or used as a part of an incremental migration in an existing project. Also, another important thing is that we do not require Redux to use the Redux toolkit. We do not require Redux toolkit to use Redux. So we can individually use Redux and then Redux toolkit differently. There are many existing applications that use other Redux wrapper libraries or write all Redux logic by hand. And it is okay if you prefer a different approach, you can go ahead with that, but it is good to make your code easier and simpler to read. Overall, whether you are a brand new Redux user setting up your first project or an experienced user who wants to simplify an existing application, using Redux Toolkit will make your code better and more maintainable. What is included in the toolkit? So the Redux toolkit includes the configure store, wraps create store to provide simplified configuration operations and good defaults. It can automatically combine our slice reducer, adds whatever Redux middleware we supply, includes Redux Thunk by default, and enables us the use of Redux dev tools. Next is create reducer. Create reducer that lets us supply a lookup table of action types to case reducer functions rather than writing switch statements. In addition, it automatically uses the IMer library to let us write simpler immutable updates with normal mutative code. Next is the create action. Create action generates an action creator function for the given action type string. The function itself has toString defined so that it can be used in place of the type constant. It also includes the create slice. Create slice accepts an object of reducer function, a slice name, and an initial value, and automatically generates a slice reducer with corresponding action creator and action types. The next function is create async thunk. It accepts an action type string and a function that returns a promise, a generates a thunk that dispatches action type based on that promise. Next, it includes create entity adapter. It generates a set of reusable reducers and selectors to manage normalized data in the store. The last is create selector. The create selector utility from the reselect library re-exported for the ease of use. Redux Toolkit also has a new RTK query data fetching API. RTK query is a powerful data fetching and caching tool built specifically for Redux. It is designed to simplify common cases for loading data in a web application, eliminating the need to hand write data fetching and caching logic ourselves. RTK query is an optional add-on included in the Redux Toolkit package, and its functionality is built on top of the other APIs in Redux Toolkit. So the main motivation of this is the web applications normally need to fetch data from a server in order to display it. They also usually need to make updates to that data, send those updates to the server, and keep the cached data on the client in sync with the data on the server. So the API was designed to abstract the typical pattern of tracking the loading state, avoiding duplicate requests for the same data, optimistic updates to make the UI feel faster, and managing cache lifetime as the user interacts with the UI. So this was all about the Redux Toolkit. You can also visit the official documentation of this and you can read about it. So I'll see you in the next video.